Another type of word problem that involves linear equations in one variables would be word problems surrounding consecutive integers. So you have to remember a couple of things. One, integers can be described as follows. So it's just a number set. It's all of the whole numbers and their negative counterparts. So no decimals, no fractions, just positives, negatives, and then the number zero. Okay. Now, when we talk about consecutive, that just means in a row. So if we just say flat out consecutive integers always increase by one. So for example, 6, increase it by one is 7, increase that by one is 8. You could increase it by one again, which would be 9, and then 10, and then 11, and so forth. If you're dealing with consecutive even or odd integers, you're always increasing by 2. So if you start with some odd number, for example, here we have 11. If I increase 11 by 2, I get the next odd number, which is 13. If I increase that by 2, I get the next odd number, which is 15. Add 2 again, I get the next odd number, which is 17, and so forth. The exact same pattern works for even numbers. So in this example, I showed you 24. If I take 24 and I add 2, I skip an odd and I get to the next even number, which is 26. I add 2 more, I get to 28. I add 2 more, I would get to the next even integer, which would be 30, and so forth. So when you're dealing with consecutive integers, plain old consecutive integers, you're always increasing by 1. Consecutive even or odd integers, you're always increasing by 2. Okay, now to set up consecutive integer problems, assign the variable to the first integer. So whatever the first integer is, that's always going to be your x or whatever variable you use. And then write all other integers in terms of the first and use this to create an equation to solve. Okay, so let's look at this. I did do 2 story problems here, so there's like a little bit of a real world scenario going on behind the scenes. So let's see here. Example 5 says solve each consecutive integer problem. You must include an equation. So again, this is kind of like the previous video where we were talking about Jim and Pam. A lot of these problems, yes, you can fiddle around with numbers. We're smart people. We have number sense. We use numbers every day. So a lot of times if you just sort of play around with it, you can find the answer. But remember, you're in an algebra class. Your instructor is going to want to see your algebra. Okay? So make sure you know how to create the equation and then solve the equation. All right. So part A says 2 office doors next to each other have door numbers that are consecutive odd integers. If the sum of the office door numbers is 208, find each office door number. So this is how I do this. When I'm dealing with consecutive integers, I always label them first, second, third, fourth, fifth, whatever. So I've got my first integer, which is going to be the first door number. If I add it to my second integer, which is going to be the second door number, they have to have a sum of 208. So we're told flat out we have 2 office door numbers. Their numbers are consecutive odd integers, and the word odd is very important, okay? If you have the sum of these office door numbers, you get 208. What are the door numbers? Well, remember just a bit ago, let me scroll up so you can see it right here. We said assign the variable to the first integer. So I'm always just going to let my first integer be x. Now, also prior to that, we said if you're dealing with consecutive odd or even integers, you always increase by 2. So if I have an odd number, to get to the next odd number, I add 2. To get to the next odd number, I add 2 more, and so forth. So if my first odd integer is x, my second odd integer has to be x and then plus 2 more. Okay, so my first odd integer is x, my second odd integer is x plus 2. If I can combine that algebraically, I'll get an equation that I can solve. So x plus x is 2x, plus 2 is just plus 2, I just bring it down. And now looking right here, I have an equation that I can solve. If I can solve this equation for x, I get the value of the first integer, and I can use that to find the value of the second integer. Okay, so I want to get the 2x alone. The issue is plus 2. I want to move it, so I'm going to move it by subtracting. So on the left, I just get 208 minus 2, which is going to be 206. And then on the right, I get just plain old 2x. And the reason for that is I have 2x plus 2x minus 2x. Well, positive 2x minus 2x is just 0, and 2x minus 0 or 2x plus 0 is just 2x. So now I have 206 equals 2x. I want to go ahead and get the x all by itself. So in order to do that, I need to divide both sides by 2. So undo that multiplication of 2 and x by division. So I divide by 2. To maintain balance, I divide by 2 again. On the left, we have 206 divided by 2, which should be 103. And then on the right, 2 divided by 2 is 1. 1 times x is x. I hate the way that looks personally as a mathematician. I never write the number equals the variable. I would always write this x equals 103. So in a situation where your variables kind of naturally end up on the right, you still want to write it where the variable ends up on the left at the end, okay? But just like in the previous video, we're not done yet. We know that x is 103, which is fantastic, but we don't have an answer to the actual question, which is find each office door number. We are ready to check though. So I know that x is 103. I know that the second office door number is x, which is 103 plus 2. So the second office door number should be 105, but we can check it. If we add these two door numbers, remember, they have to add up to 208. So 3 plus 5 is 8. 0 plus 0 is 0. 2 plus 2 is 2. Bam, there we have it. We have the sum of these two office door numbers really truly is 208. We want to describe our answer and just say something simple like the office door numbers are 103 and 105. And that's it. So consecutive integers, I think, are one of the easier types of word problems because it's always going to be start with x, and then it's going to be x plus 1 more than that, x plus 1 more than that, and 1 more than that. Or it's going to be x plus 2 more than that, x plus 2 more than that, and you just keep increasing by 2's or by 1's. Okay? Let's look at part B. So part B says the sum of 4 consecutive pages in a book is 870. Find the page numbers. So in this case, we're dealing with just plain old consecutive integers. You've got a page number, the next one, the very next one, and the very next one after that. So since I've got 4 page numbers, I'm going to say that I have first, second, third, and fourth. And I know if I add up these page numbers, it better equal 870. Okay? Now, we were also told that these are just 4 consecutive pages. They're not consecutive even, they're not consecutive odd, they're just one page right after the other. Okay? Now, I told you previously that when I do consecutive integers, I always assign the variable to the first integer. I just say the first integer is x. And if I want to get to the very next integer, I just add 1. Now, if I want to get to the next integer, I add 1 more. So if I already have x and then I have x plus 1, to get to the next integer, I have x plus 1 more, which is really just x plus 2. And then the next integer is going to be x plus 1 more plus 1 more than that, which is really just x plus 3. So get into the habit of kind of understanding this column right here. So you don't have all these ones stringing out forever. It's just going to be x plus 1 plus 2 plus 3. And let's just sort of play around with this. Let's say the page number x is 100. Well, that's x. If I take x plus 1, that's 101. If I take x plus 2, that's 100 plus 2, which is 102. If I take x plus 3, that's 100 plus 3, which is 103. You can see here, we really do have 4 consecutive numbers. Okay, hold tight, I need water. Okay, so keep all of that in mind. I'm going to erase that for now, and then we'll get back to the regular problem. It'd be cool if I had the actual eraser. There we go. Okay, so let's get back to our problem. We have the algebra set up. So we know that the first integer is x, the second integer is going to be x plus 1, the next integer is going to be x plus 2, and then we have x plus 3. If we can combine like terms on all this x stuff, we can get a really simple equation to solve. So I have x plus x plus x plus x, that gives me 4x. And then I have 3 plus 2, which is 5, plus 1 is 6. So that x column, it combines to just be 4x plus 6. Okay, so here's my equation to solve. First thing I want to do is get the 4x alone. My issue is the 6. I want to subtract it from both sides. On the left, 870 minus 6 is going to be what? 864. And then on the right, the 6's cancel. 6 minus 6 is 0. 4x plus 0 is just 4x. And now I want to get the x by itself. The issue is this multiplication of 4. We undo multiplication with division. So I want to divide both sides by 4. 4 divided by 4 is 1. 1 times x is x. And then I'm out of room a little bit, so just follow where I'm going on the page. But 864 divided by 4 is 216. Now, when you solve these problems, make sure your answers really are integers, okay? So if I were to get a decimal right here, I would know I made some mistake somewhere, so you automatically just scrap it and go back to the drawing board and try again. But 216 is an integer, so let's go and check it. So I know that x is just 216. The second integer is going to be 216 plus 1, which is 217. The next integer is going to be 216 plus 2, which is 218. And the last and fourth integer is going to be 216 plus 3, which is 219. Make sure you have integers that truly are consecutive. Yes, these are consecutive. Yes, they're integers. Now we just have to check their sum. We want to make sure they add up to 870. So let's see, 9 plus 8 is 17. 17 plus 7 is going to be 24. 24 plus 6 is 30. So I keep a 0 and I carry a 3. 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 is 4. Plus the 3 that I carried is 7. And then 2 plus 2 plus 2 plus 2 is 8. Hot dog, everything added up correctly. So we would say something like the page numbers are 216, 217, 218, and 219. And there you have it. So that's consecutive integers, okay? So just read the question carefully. Always look for what the sum is. Also look to see if you're dealing with even, odd, or just regular old consecutive. Remember, just regular old consecutive integers, you're always just taking x and increasing it by increments of 1. If you're dealing with even or odd, you're always taking x and then you're increasing it by increments of 2, okay? And that should do it for you.